Hi everyone, welcome to GV Face, our weekly video hangout series. Today we are talking about freeing Ethiopia's Zone 9 bloggers. I am really thrilled to have with us two guests, Endalk, who is an Ethiopian contributor to Global Voices, a PhD student at the University of Oregon, and a member of the Zone 9 blogging collective, and Deji Olukoton, who is a Freedom to Write Fellow at Pan American Center. Deji is in New York and Endalk is in Oregon. I'm so glad to have them with us today. So my name is Ellery Biddle, and I am the editor of Global Voices Advocacy Project. And I want to start just with a really brief description of what has been happening to our community over the last few weeks. In late April, we got an email from one of our Ethiopian contributors with the subject line, "Shocking," and I opened it, and he explained that 4 of our members had been arrested, along with 5 other bloggers and journalists in Ethiopia. And it was a really scary and emotional moment, and since then, our community has really come together to try to figure out how we can push for their release and support their case, raise awareness about what is happening to these community members and journalists and bloggers that we care very much about. And we've been working with the Committee to Protect Journalists, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and the Media Legal Defense Initiative to rally awareness and support around the case. So I want to start by talking with Endalk, who is perhaps the person who knows most about this because it is his own crew who is in the middle of this right now. So Endalk, if you could start just by talking to us about what is Zone 9, how did you guys come together, why did you decide to start blogging? Great. Oh. You need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Hillary. So Zone 9 as a collective have started to blog in May 2012. Before that, all of us have had our own individual blogs. We've decided to come to as a collective blogger in Ethiopia because let me give you a bit of background on how we have decided to come to as a collective bloggers that Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa next to Nigeria, and we didn't have dailies, independent dailies, newspapers, any kind of independent media. There was no independent media. So there was national election in 2010 again. So there was no alternative voices. So we've started to discuss online. So we meet, all of us meet online on Facebook, on Twitter, on blog. So all of us have been reading each. Especially I myself as a follower of Befakadu and Abel's blog. So we've decided to come together and start the blog in 2012. There was no independent press or independent voice in Ethiopia. That's why we've started the campaign. I mean, the blog together. So that was the reason. So after we've come together, we have different activities. We have campaigned for freedom of expressions. We've campaigned for respect the constitution. Ethiopia has one of good constitution, but the government never respected the constitution. So we've started to campaign for respect constitution online, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on blogs as well. So we have had 4 major campaigns. The first one is Respect the Constitution campaign. The second one is Stop Censorship campaign. The third one is Respect the Right to Demonstrate campaign. And the fourth and the final one is Let's Dream a Better Ethiopia by Respecting the Constitution. So we have had 4 major campaigns. So besides this, we have also other activities. We used to go to different prisons to visit political prisoners. We've managed to bring attention to different political prisoners in Ethiopia, like Skinder Nega, Riot Alemu, Elbana Lilisa, Bakala Garba. All these are political prisoners. And we brought them to the public's attention by trying to put them on public's memory using social media. So these are what we've been doing. And so the name Zone 9 is kind of proverbial. And as I told you, that we used to go to different prisons, and prisoners of conscience described as dwellers. The whole Ethiopia is described as dwellers of Zone 9. There is this big prison in Addis called Kaliti, which has different zones, 8 zones. So people who are living in that 8th zone or in Kaliti describe Ethiopia as a bigger prison, and they describe us as dwellers of Zone 9. So we believe that we are voices of bigger prison Ethiopia. That's how we named Zone 9. So that's how we've started to write, blog, and campaign for greater cause, which is freedom.
So then what happened? Because you guys are facing these threats, and it's because you're doing something powerful and influential. Like, if it was not powerful, I don't think that this situation would be happening. Can you tell us a little bit about what kinds of things have happened, leading up to this? And because I know that the group stopped blogging for a little while, and then if you could just say like a little bit about what it has felt like to watch this happening from far.
Yeah, before my departure from Ethiopia in September, we've decided to do a UPR report with different international organizations. We want to do a universal periodic review on human rights and freedom of expression in Ethiopia. So we've started to collaborate with different international organizations, different international NGOs, human rights organizations, which is not a crime on its own, which government tried to label it as a crime. So we've invited different journalists in Ethiopia to start to report and document the repression that they have been suffering from, that they have been experiencing. So we want to document that and put it into the report, compile it into the Universal Periodic Review report. So in the process, we've invited some pro-government journalists, which took this as an offense. So then we know that we have been doing the right thing. Then immediately we've started to be followed. We've started to be under surveillance. Actually, there was a surveillance before that even. For example, one incident that surprises us all was that there was this exhibition, a military exhibition that the government had in 2011, and 2 of our members went there to just visit the exhibition, the military exhibition. And people were around that exhibition took 2 of our members aside and told them that we know, we have been following you, we know what you have been doing, whom you have been contacting, what status updates that you have been doing on your Facebook. We know that what you have been doing. So we are advising you to stop it. We don't want you to be in collision with us. Just be safe. Don't worry. If you stop, you'll be fine. Then we tried to discuss this issue, and we've decided no, we don't have to stop. What we've been doing is legal, constitutional, human rights work, so we don't have to stop. And we've decided to continue what we've been doing. But since September 2013, the surveillance and the harassment is becoming bigger and intense. And two of our members have been under target. They have been followed. They have been under surveillance. So they are reporting to the group. We have a common page, a secret common page, which we have been doing discussions because some of us are afar. So that is what we have been doing. So the surveillance and the intensity has growing. Then we started to consider stopping for kind of a while. Then that surveillance and harassment never stops. After we have stopped, that never stops. So we have decided to come back again with a note that we have written. We have been suffering from surveillance and harassment that we're not going to stop. Then we have started it again. Immediately, they surprised us all that they detained our members.
Endalk, I'd just like to ask, you mentioned that you were thinking about doing the Universal Periodic Review Report at the UN. And can you explain that a little bit better? How did these journalists, did you invite them to talk about your work? How did that lead to the surveillance? Were they aware of it and you granted an interview and then it turned out they were insulted? Or they were insulted and bothered by the fact that you were doing the research in the first place and you planned to do a report at the UN?
Okay, great question. So what we have been doing was constitutional, and there is no such an offense in it as such. And what we what we did was we need to make them participate in the report. We don't, we want to be very balanced. We want to include all kinds of voices. And we know that there are government journalists who are suffering from repression as well. The repression is not only on independent and dissident voices. There are repression going on in the government journalists themselves. They tell you a lot of things what they are suffering from. They write news and give it to the editor or to someone who is in command, and they will find the news totally changed. So we want to include this kind of experience in the UPR report. That's why we invited them. But there are people who are working, undercover for the government. That's how they took this offense, and and they took little bit of organizations like this as a very serious danger for greater cause. People will start to ask critical questions, and there are taboo issues that we have tried to cover on the report. That people, for example, do not are not allowed to write on, for example, land issues, critical issues, land policies. People are not allowed to write about corruption issues. So journalists do not have a right to write news or commentary or write an editorial on these sensitive and government taboo issues. That's why we invited them and to discuss all the issues and verify the facts. That's why we invited them. But we have never expected that they took it as an offense, and we were innocent, and we took a very candid approach to start discussion, to kindle a discussion. But that ended up in this kind of messy situation.
I'm curious, Endalk, we've been having all these different discussions with the community and then kind of, smaller groups of trying to strategize and figure out what to do about this. And one thing a lot of people have asked is, like, is it okay to be so candid and open about the surveillance issue, for instance? And it's really interesting to me that it seems like the Zone 9ers the decision from a while back was to be very kind of open about it. Is that true? Like, it seems like you guys have, it hasn't been a secret at all. And I'm wondering, could you just tell us, like, how did you decide to do that? Or was it sort of obvious, or did you have some debate or doubts about it?
Yeah, I have to start again with a little bit of background that this current regime have been accusing the two predecessors regimes of repression, and they say that they muffled critical voices, they muffled press, but they end up being the same with previous regime. And we've discussed this as a cultural issue. But we have discussed and we have agreed that we need to start. So when should be the right time to start? There is no right time to start this kind of discussion to bring freedom to the society. So we need to start and kind of ignite discussion among us ourselves, and we kind of push the discussion that we had among us ourselves to the society using the social media. So that's what we've done. And we know that trying to get a license to start a newspaper is one big hurdle. We even started to consider to start a newspaper, but getting a license will take you like eternity. It's impossible to get license to start a newspaper. The radio programs, no. You need to be very well connected with the government. You have to show what kind of programs that you're going to make on your radio programs. So, these are the things, these are the challenges that we had, and still there is a challenge. So, Ethiopia has one of the oldest TV and radio stations in Africa, and still they are the same. No independent radio and TV stations. We know that it is very difficult to get licenses to operate as an independent media. So we know that the challenges, the hurdles, and the repercussions. So we have had that kind of discussion, but we have opted to use social media to be as an independent media or as an independent civil organizations. That's what we've been doing. So before our decision to come, we have had this great discussion, and we have decided to take a risk. We need to be a little bit vulnerable to start that discussion, to start the societal transformation. We need to be a little bit of vulnerable. So we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. That's what we did.
Wow. Very brave. Well, so I want to turn to Deji now and just say quickly that it's been really inspiring for me to work with you, Deji, and with some of our other partners to strategize around this and to figure out what are all the different ways that we as free speech advocates, as writers, bloggers, what can we do to try to change what's happening here and get these friends of ours released. And that has come in the form of campaign letters and a lot of social media activism and a lot of other things. And I'll run through that at the end so that everybody knows what they can do to help support the bloggers' release. But Deji, if you could tell us about PEN and what it's a pretty unique organization. You could explain what you guys do, and then how do you, when something like this happens, how do you respond?
Thanks, Ellery. It's great to be here. I'm a big fan of Global Voices and Global Voices advocacy, and seeing the community come together, all the bloggers and activists, has been remarkable. So it's great to pitch in where we can. PEN was founded in 1922, so it's over 90 years old, and one of the few organizations, if not the only organization in the world, that is devoted to the promotion of literature and the defense of free expression. So we have over 100 PEN centers around the world. We're the largest one here in New York. Our secretariat is in London. and they're groups of writers who self-identified, say they're committed to literature and free expression, and want to make a difference. There are several ways that we can help, and I can be a little bit more specific about how we've helped out in Ethiopia in particular. There's been, as Endalk explained, a major issue with freedom of expression for many years. In 2012, we gave our Freedom to Write Award, which honors a jailed dissident or journalist, to Iskender Nega, who Endalk mentioned, and we've also been campaigning on behalf of Riyad Olemu. But there are a couple of ways that writers like to get together, and one is if you're a very high-profile writer, lending your name to an action of some kind can be enough. So if you're a Nobel Prize laureate and you just sign on to a petition, that can get attention in international press. It can get attention by decision makers. Another way we work with writers is to actually have them campaign. You've seen the photo, I hope, of we had a panel at our World Voices Festival, which happens every year, just a couple weeks ago, and some African writers got up and we put a sign together and took a photograph and made a statement about the Zone 9 bloggers and how people can help. And then we're also active at the the United Nations and the intergovernmental body level. So Endalk was talking about the Human Rights Council, and we're very active. In fact, we did do a report on Ethiopia with a number of other groups about freedom of expression, but also freedom of information. Just getting information is difficult to find out what the government is doing. So those are a few ways that we've helped. And like you said, Ellery, we'd love to hear more from you and from Endalk about how we can pitch in, because this is a major issue for us. Writers in Ethiopia are not free to write what they want or say what they want, and we're very concerned and we want to help out.
Well, I'm really sorry that we have to wrap up because I'm immensely enjoying this, but I want to thank both of you so much, and I guess close by first asking you, Endalk, to just give us a final word, and maybe if you could, one thing we haven't heard from you is, like, how do you feel? We had this conversation a few weeks ago when we were strategizing about different campaign letters that people wanted to write, and someone said, well, are there any Amharic translators who can translate these into Amharic, which is the local language in Ethiopia, and you said they're all in jail. And so I wanted to just hear from you, like, a couple words about what, how do you feel, and what do you hope for?
Yeah, to be honest, I was kind of suffering from survivor's syndrome. That, these are my close friends. We were doing a lot of stuff together. And not only me, two of our members who are in exile now somewhere, are suffering from kind of this syndrome, survivor syndrome. You feel guilty that you are not with your friends in the most important part of their time. We are not together with them. Sometimes I feel I should be there. That's what I am feeling, honestly. And trying to do the campaign when you are, when you know that your friends, your close associates, your colleagues are in prison and they don't know what's going on outside. That makes you feel really, really bad. So that's what I'm feeling, honestly. And the final word, we want to continue this campaign as far as it goes. I mean, we want people to focus the attention on this campaign. And, it's unheard of that they are going to appear on court on weekends. And they have not been allowed to be visited by their family members for 19 days. They have been investigated by the investigators without having an access to their lawyers. So this is unconstitutional. And they have created a system to make them appear on court on weekends. This is to make them feel uncomfortable. So we have to continue our pressure from outside and make the world know that the government is trying to muzzle very innocent people like my friends. So this, it's fortunately we are connected with global voices and other international organizations. That's why we have been heard. There are a lot of independent voices which are unheard of because they didn't have a connection with different international organizations because the government effectively muffled every possible connections. That's what they did, and that is effective. There are lots of human rights abuses which are not being reported in Ethiopia, and we want the world to see this and to keep an eye on Ethiopian human rights violation.
Can I just add, Ellery and Endalk, that it does seem that if you live in the U.S., you can make a big difference in this campaign in particular because of the aid money that is approved by Congress every year to go to Ethiopia. So being an American does not mean you can't have an impact. You can have a very real impact by reaching out to your Congress people and talking to them and raising this case.
This is true in the EU as well, and that's something that we want to start doing more work on in the coming days. So unfortunately, we have to close. Before we do, I want to let everybody know what you can do to help support the campaign for these bloggers' release. Please go to our website, advocacy.globalvoicesonline.org. You'll see in the upper right-hand corner a nice box that says Free the Zone 9 Bloggers. Click there, and you'll come to our campaign page where you will see some simple actions that anybody can do. One is to send a photo of support to our Tumblr, which is doing really well. Another is to lend your name or your organization's name to the Global Voices community statement asking for their release. And the third really powerful thing is to send a letter to the ambassador to Ethiopia in your country, asking that person to intervene and speak out on the case on behalf of our friends and colleagues. Thank you both so much for coming on today, and thanks to everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellery. Thank you, Endalk.
Thank you.
All right, and we are out. Thanks, everybody.